procedures on these virtual patients had the same or greater learning experience and retention as the students that learn on real patients. So there's definitely some interesting stuff in simulation happening right now. This is probably the area where I'm most interested because it does really overlap gaming. It turns learning into gaming. We're seeing stuff like kind of a hybrid simulation and in collaboration where people are building like World of Warcraft in a company. You can go in and you play World of Warcraft essentially to learn the employee handbook and stuff like that. There's some really cool stuff going on in that area where people are they're trying to figure out a way to convey information and get people to retain that knowledge. So I think this is an area that's interesting. If you read my blog by chance, I'm kind of down on collaborating on 2D documents in 3D right now, at least, until somebody proves a better use case to me, but I just think it's kind of goofy. We can talk about that later. So entertainment's the third type of world. This is an event where we brought Ben Folds in to Second Life. We met in New York. He kind of showed up inebriated, and he wanted us to direct his avatar around naked, bumping into girls. It was a lot of fun. So this is another example where we did a live music event for NBC. We actually went to Chungking Studios here in New York. We had the artist show up. We recorded it, we broadcasted it in World, we had a bunch of regions set up in Second Life. It's just an example of how you can leverage an existing virtual world from another publisher and have fun on an event. We recently did the CSI project where we took CSI New York and we did a transmedia project. We put plot elements from the show, basically. The end of this particular episode, the story was the murder was of some girl who played Second Life, and so the cops, the investigators had to go in and try to track down the killer in Second Life. At the end of the episode, the killer gets away. Everyone was directed to the web to sign up for Second Life and go in and research the crime, and then there was a second episode of CSI that came just a few weeks ago.
The CSI franchise. I'm glad they put you on the case. Let's go.
So we recreated part of New York in Second Life, and you have to go into the crime lab and solve puzzles and mysteries and things like that. I'm not going to play all of this because of time, but it's on the web if you want to find out. Alright, so moving on. So one of the things that we've found through all the projects we've done in Second Life and other platforms is that the download is a real downer for the mainstream. There's two problems that we have with these types of platforms. Now, collaboration and simulation aside, because those two areas are usually done in environments where you can mandate the computer hardware being used. When it's an orientation situation, you can have the students or the new employees go into the company computer lab to play the first-person shooter for the employee manual. And for simulation, you can also maintain a certain environment. But consumers are a fickle crowd. And so what we find is that from the time that they view the web page to when they register to when they download, they basically end up with a very small percentage. So we did the CSI project, we've done other projects, and we've basically seen that download really just kills the number of people that make it in, and it's about 50% every time through those steps that you lose.
What download size are you assuming?
It's like, well, I guess the Windows viewer is 40 meg, and the Mac viewer is like 70 or 80. Yeah. Okay, I think I'm going to have to skip through 2D versus 3D, and the concept there, basically the gist is that this is pretty cool, but not as entertaining maybe as this, but people use mental models to basically supplement whatever they can't see in an environment. And in fact, this has been a long debate in the industry. It's probably in the gaming industry even longer. Basically, what the fidelity of graphics you need to convey the user experience. And really, the graphics fidelity should be tied to how well you convey the model to them, so that the user can interpret what you're trying to get them to understand, so that they can anticipate. And when you just know that you're not using enough graphics fidelity, or your just design is awful, then the experience is not in line with the user, with what the user is expecting. Because through all the research that we've done, nobody reads instructions on screens. Nobody will read note cards in Second Life. They just go in there and it's like, this isn't working, and then they quit. So I'll come back to that in a minute. So I think when people talk about platforms, I like to think of it in these 4 quadrants. This is really like what it takes to get a virtual world launched. Not so much what it takes to become part of somebody else's virtual world like Second Life, but just like to launch an MMO. Production is making it, and all the creative stuff. Infrastructure is basically making it scale and work. Operation is keeping the thing running, and of course distribution is acquiring users. And there's no single platform that actually addresses all of this. In fact, most platforms do a really bad job of supporting even 2 of these. Most of them are focused on just production, or maybe a little bit of production, and some ideas around infrastructure, and some stuff around operation, but this is the whole thing. Now, if you're going into Second Life, the game, they handle distribution for you to a certain extent. If you want to market to 600,000 people that are in the world, great. But if you've got a big major brand, like you're going to Coca-Cola, or I don't know what a good example would be, but if you're BMW and you want to make BMW World, then you've got probably millions of users of your own that you want to have in the experience, and the 600,000 people in Second Life don't really mean anything to you. So it all depends on who you're trying to market to and what your approach is. But this is what I look for when I look at platforms, and when we consult with clients, when we come up with a user experience, we also have to think through all of these different things. So here's kind of just a quick rundown of architecture that we look at. There's the architecture itself, which is the client, whether it's an email link, browser, download plugin, whatever. It's all the server stuff. It's how you're going to make the data all connect and work together. Like, for example, there's some interesting stuff right now where there's some peer-to-peer communication happening on one of the new platforms where users actually are almost using like BitTorrent to exchange and update each other's clients while all of the other client-server data is going on. So it's the environment. This is the public and private spaces in the world, how you handle things like sharding, which is duplicating areas within the world, the graphics, the physics, all the parts of the avatars. I mean, if you guys are studying gaming, all this stuff is like, well, duh, right? It's interesting how much of an overlap there is, but yet we're somehow in a different discipline. So these are all the different data services that you have to think about. You have to be pretty heavy on community tools. Things like character management really comes into play. If EVE Online, you spend like 5 minutes customizing your avatar based on the race that you chose, and it's like this 2D picture on your profile for the rest of your EVE Online life. With virtual worlds, it's more important how you appear in social environments. And Second Life, really caters to people that want to play dress up and that sort of thing. So character management is very important. All these other things like marketplace. Anytime, I think it was the economist from CCP, the makers of EVE, actually at World in Motion this year, he said, how do you deal? The question was, how do you deal with secondary markets emerging? And he's like, well, you do what you can, but essentially, anytime there's a perceived value for anything in your world, expect there to be some sort of market that forms. So either you can embrace it and take a chunk of it and manage it, or you can just let it happen on IG.com or whatever the secondary marketplace would be.